Lewis Hamilton returned to what many would say is his rightful place at the top of the podium in the Russian Grand Prix at the weekend. Nate Saunders joining me for this one, and as much as we want to talk about Lewis and everything, Nate, we have to talk about some drama that's been brewing over at Ferrari, and we saw it really come to a climax, I suppose, just at the weekend. And that is just the thing with Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc and the whole change, the driver swap, if you will. So first, I have to ask you, what were Ferrari even trying to achieve with this? Because usually if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, well, in theory, it was a really clever idea. Basically, Lewis Hamilton was starting second and had probably a better strategy option because of the tyres he was starting on. So the idea was, on that long run down, if Vettel gets ahead of Hamilton on the run down there, use the slipstream of Leclerc, get into the lead, Hamilton's third. Then you switch your drivers back because Leclerc really was a sitting duck. The problem was they let it all play out over the radio. You know, they obviously had this agreement before the race.
And Ferrari, you would say, would be favourites going into this because of this.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was actually a very clever way of neutralising Hamilton. So for a team that's often criticised for making some strategy blunders, this was actually a very, very clever idea. The problem was they executed it in quite a Ferrari way, and it was just playing out in kind of an embarrassing way for the team. And they were quite lucky in the end because they were able to kind of get out of it by doing it in the pit stop window with Leclerc. But you could tell from the body language after that both drivers, you know, Vettel was like, I'm not slowing down to let Leclerc pass. I think that's a pretty bad look for a driver. And Leclerc obviously thought he would get that position back. So we're saying, well, you know, I did everything you asked of me. Why is he not doing the same thing? So really interesting, and it's going to be fascinating to see how they manage that going forward now.
So what's your take on it now then from Sebastian Vettel now? Was it just outright him blatantly saying, you know what, nah, I'm going to do this my way because I know what's better, at least for me in this one or for the team in this one? Or was there some misunderstanding or whatnot? What kind of message is he trying to send after this?
I don't think it was a misunderstanding at all. I don't think you leave a pre-race meeting misunderstanding or not being sure of what, especially if it's that complicated. You know, you leave that knowing what you're doing. Vettel has previous in this before, so 2013 there was multi-21. He was told to stay behind Mark Webber at Red Bull. Mark Webber slowed down thinking Vettel would do that. Vettel overtook him, it was called multi-21, Webber was upset. And afterwards Vettel said the reason I did that was because in the race in Brazil, the final race of the year before, so 6 months before that, Webber had nearly pushed him into the wall. So he held a grudge for 6 months. And then he did that. And we know that Vettel is upset with some of the things Leclerc's been doing in the recent races. And there's a real power struggle going on there. So I think it was Vettel basically putting his flag back in the turf and saying, you know, this is my team. He joined the team to win the championship. And I think that's going to be the thing that ultimately Ferrari has to stop from turning into a really bad situation.
Now, I know that there's many if, buts and maybes and everything's, you know, better in retrospect. But do you think that had they just stuck to the plan and gone through, do you think that it would be Ferrari at the top of that podium though and not Mercedes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't think Mercedes would have won. The thing that actually cost them was Vettel's car then broke down after his pit stop, and then that allowed Mercedes to pit at a fortuitous time and win the race. So I think that ultimately added to the kind of the disastrous look it had for Ferrari. They had the first half of the race was them basically arguing with their drivers, and the second half was basically handing this win to Mercedes, when Mercedes didn't need the win. You know, Mercedes is far ahead enough in the championship as it is, and they weren't going to win the race either. So Mercedes afterwards said this is the toughest they've had it in this whole era of domination right now. So, you know, that speaks volumes to where Ferrari is right now, but they absolutely would have won that race. And I think, if anything, Vettel retiring probably saved Ferrari from more headaches, because I would have loved to have seen what he did if he'd spent the whole race behind Leclerc, if he would have, you know, tried to stick one up on the inside of turn 2, tried to pass again, if they'd crashed, whatever, because clearly they both don't want to lose to the other person. So that kind of maybe saved Ferrari from another headache, because I don't think if they'd said to Vettel, don't attack Leclerc, he would have said, yeah, okay, fine, I'll just sit here and watch my teammate in front of me, because he was quicker in the race.
Yeah.
So, you know, if anything, it was kind of maybe a good retirement, you could say. But yeah, they should have won the race, definitely.
Well, of course, the big question now is where do they go from here? Because you do have Sebastian Vettel. We don't even need to talk about his accolades. His name alone speaks for himself. But you do have Charles Leclerc. You've heard Lewis Hamilton talk about him. Everyone talks about him as, you know, the new prince that's up and coming, you know, has his whole career ahead of him, really and truly. Everyone's excited. So how do you manage these two? Or is it even possible to manage these two?
I don't think it is, because you think they've had 4 races now with the best car and they're already in this state. Mercedes, the one good thing they have with Bottas being in the team is that he doesn't rock the boat. You know, Lewis knows where he is with Bottas, and that's one reason why they've always re-signed Bottas, is for that harmony within the team. And you can just see it Ferrari. If they have a title-winning car next year, if those two guys are both fighting against each other for wins and for races, dictating strategy is going to be so difficult. And what you do in that situation when you have two teammates kind of at war with each other is you just open the door to another team. Say Lewis is outperforming Bottas next year, he'll say thank you very much, and we'll have situations like this again where Mercedes are picking up the scraps. So Ferrari really have to be careful that it doesn't spiral out of control now and hamper potentially a championship winning campaign next year, because I don't think either guy's going to back down, and I don't think...
Who's going to have to go, though, if someone has to?
I think I really rate Vettel. I love Vettel, but he's the older guy, you know. And if you're looking at it from a long-term perspective, you've got to back Charles Leclerc. You know, he's the Ferrari junior guy. They've invested into his career. Vettel's got the name, but yeah, if you're Mattia Binotto, you've got to pick Leclerc over Vettel. And maybe Vettel knows that, and that's why he's kind of flexing his muscles a bit. But it's going to be fascinating to watch what happens now.
Interesting times at Ferrari, and as Nate says, fascinating to watch. We'll see exactly what happens next.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.